Okay, so in this video, we're going to go ahead and talk about the difference between vibrance and saturation in Adobe Lightroom Classic. And also, just as a general theory, the differences are going to be the same in any editing program that you use. So in this case here, okay, we have this photo here that this is, as it was shot originally. No edits have been done on this picture. And on the right, once you're in the Develop tab, and you're under the Basic tab, which is usually your first one here on the right, you can expand it if it's closed. If you see that you can't actually see anything for you to change, you can go ahead and click on the arrow to the right of any of these tabs, and it will expand that tab. So at the very bottom of this Basic tab, you're going to see Vibrance and Saturation. And now the color sliders, they're going to look the same, right? So upon first glance, just like any of the others, except for temperature and tint, it's hard to tell visually from the display what that's going to do. So just going ahead to explore these, right? If you go to Vibrance first and you bring it up, you can tell that everything gets, much more vibrant, we'll say. And if you go down, everything seems to desaturate a lot more. Okay, so to reset it, and this is a good tip, to ever reset any of the changes that you made to these sliders to 0, instead of going and trying to get it perfectly back to 0, you can also just double click on the little white, sort of button that you slide across. So again, we messed around with vibrance and we saw that, it made it more vibrant and way less vibrant on both ends. And now with saturation, you can see that if I go up, close to the same, and if I go down again, everything desaturates. So the key difference in theory is that vibrance is basically going to understand what parts of your image are lacking in its vibrance. So for example, these greens here, right, seem a lot more muddled and almost gray, so less vibrant than the yellow on the shirt, okay? So when I go to pump up the vibrance, Lightroom is basically going to understand that these greens and this gray and the blue back here and maybe, the blue on the metal strap, those are all going to be less vibrant than other colors in this image. And so it's only going to mostly work on enhancing those, okay? And so what Lightroom also does is that it will often go to detect skin tones within your image and also try to maintain those when you build the vibrance up. So if I go and I pull up the vibrance, you can tell that if you just look at this person's skin tone, the difference isn't actually that great. But if you go and you look at the change again in the greens, when I put the vibrance up, the greens become significantly more vibrant in the change between, the start and then the end, than the skin tone on his face, or even the yellow shirt that he's wearing. So vibrance is kind of a more intuitive slider. Saturation, on the other hand, saturation takes every single color in this image and increases its saturation equally. So when I go and I bring the saturation up, you can tell that even the athlete's face and the jacket, which was already quite saturated, increase just as much as the saturation of the greens behind in the trees or the lake as well, okay? And the same goes with desaturation. When I bring the saturation down, everything in this image turns gray, okay? Even the skin tone, even the jacket, even the most saturated things in this image are now completely gray. However, if I go and I bring down the vibrance all the way down, okay, you can tell that you can still see yellow and you can still see sort of the blue. So I'm going to go ahead and put these side by side for you so that you can see this on a split screen. So I'm going to create a virtual copy here, okay? And on the first one, I'm going to up the vibrance by, let's say 50. And on the second one, I'm going to up the saturation instead by around 50. And now I'm going to put them next to each other. Okay, so we can take a look. And you can tell that on the right here, which is the one where we increase the saturation, even his skin tone and even the blue here and the jacket became so much more saturated than when we're looking here at increasing the vibrance. Personally, I think it's always better to touch the vibrance first because it's a more natural effect. Oversaturated images is kind of a huge issue sometimes, and some photographers definitely take it too far in my opinion. But yeah, so there's the difference there, and I hope that helped.